Now, each and every year on all of my channels, I typically do a predictions video going into the new year. It is January 1st, 2025, and today what we're going to be talking about is, well, true crime here on Crime Time. I'm going to give you my predictions for the upcoming year, and to be perfectly honest, a lot of us that believe in innocent until proven guilty, a lot of us have made some predictions in the past and some guesses in the past, and we know whether we think somebody's guilty or not guilty. And I think this year we're going to be sitting with a lot of egg on our face. There's not too much to talk about in this video, but there are some things I am going to address. I'm JB Gunner. This is Crime Time. Let's do it.
Bring it back.
Happy New Year's, guys. I know a lot of you are hungover. A lot of you guys are not feeling too good today, and I 100% understand. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time. Guys, we're going to get into my predictions for 2025 in true crime. I've only got a few things I'm going to touch on here. I'm also going to drop a little bit of news on Kohberger, which is a little bit old. Not necessarily that old, but I haven't talked about it on the channel, but I am going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Richard Allen. I'm going to talk about P-Diddy. I'm going to talk about the true crime community in general, true crimers in general. I'm going to talk about those things today. Guys, I'm going to make my first prediction right now, and this has got nothing to do with the cases, but just as I've watched the true crime community over several years, it's not a secret that I'm not a fan of the community, right? Last year, I believe we saw 2 true crimers arrested. I think the year before, we saw a couple as well. My first prediction going into 2025 is that we will see 3 true crimers arrested in 2025. So my first prediction is going to be just amongst the community. And I also believe that once the Idaho 4 case is done, a lot of true crimers will disappear from the space. Myself, I'm going to be posting videos every day on all crimes, all things crime or true crime or whatever. So I am not going nowhere. We will have the Kohberger trial later on in the year. But my first prediction is that ultimately 3 true crimers will get arrested. And I think the reason for that is because each year it intensifies more and more. More true crimers think they're fucking detectives. When in reality, at home, all they do is sit around and snack on snack cakes and shit like that. And then all of a sudden, they pick up their phone. They think they're a journalist. They go to harass people. And that's what all the true crime journalists do. And when I say this, I don't mean the true crime commentators, for instance. For instance, Grizzly True Crime. She does great. Horse Reality does great. These are people that don't interfere. They don't go boots on the ground. They don't go harass people's families. They don't go, just like myself, I don't either. They don't go knock on people's doors. They don't go put their little bodies in the fucking, at the crime scenes or anything like that. They're not, we saw it a lot when it comes to Brian Laundrie. We saw it a lot with the Idaho 4. You got all these fat Twinkie eating YouTubers out there waddling around the fucking crime scene and shit, dropping gloves and shit, making up stories, all kinds of shit, right? I believe, just like we saw last year with Blowjob Betty, with Bullhorn Betty, she got arrested and shit for harassment or whatever the fuck she was doing, stalking, whatever the case may be. I think the year before, we saw JLR investigates, gets punched in the snout, and then he got that motherfucker arrested, even though he's the guy that was harassing the dude that punched him in the snout. You know what I'm saying? I think this year you're going to see all of that intensify, and you're going to see true crimers start to get arrested, start to go to jail, just as we have seen. But I think this year it's going to be 3. Now, how major the true crimers are, I have no clue. But I do also predict that a lot of the true crimers that's made up stories, that just clickbait made up shit, like with the Idaho 4, I'm talking about the people that literally just made shit up. I think those true crimers will go away. The people that just sat around theorizing on every little fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like the people that said Dylan was trans and all kinds of weird shit like that, right? I think those people, after the Kohberger trial, will completely go away. Do you know why? Because a lot of the people weren't here before the Kohberger trial existed. And I believe a lot of those people are going to look so fucking stupid, they're going to be gone when the Kohberger trial is over. I know what you're saying. But JB, you have said innocent until proven guilty. What about you? Won't you look stupid? We're going to get into Kohberger right now. No, I do not believe I will look stupid if Kohberger is found guilty, because my entire position is innocent until proven guilty. I wasn't sitting here making theory videos and making shit up. I was only covering the story when there was news to cover in the story. Does that make sense? So if Kohberger is found guilty, I'm going to say, I understand. And I'm going to tell you why I understand, because that's going to be my first prediction of the day. We're going to go, my first true crime story prediction of the day is we're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger. He will go to trial starting on August 11th, and I believe it lasts till November 7th of 2025. I believe Bryan Kohberger, as much as I don't think they have the evidence to do it, I think Bryan Kohberger will be found guilty on all counts in the trial. And I say that despite there being no new evidence, I don't think we're going to get any new evidence at the trial either. Did we get any new evidence in the Richard Allen case? No. And let me make this clear. There's a lot more evidence against Kohberger than there was against Richard Allen. Richard Allen looked like a dummy because Richard Allen told on himself. And I'll get to Richard Allen here in just a second, because I do have a prediction on him as well. But when it comes to Bryan Kohberger, I believe he will be found guilty. I believe that it will not be a long jury deliberation. I believe he will be found guilty of all charges, and there will be no new evidence at trial. I believe the trial will be interesting to watch. I'll be streaming it live. You guys will be able to find it on my channel. But I do not believe there will be any evidence introduced. The story, what the police believe happened, I think will be introduced. Some of the things, like perhaps maybe the knife maybe bought off Amazon, I think we'll hear about things like that, if that even exists, right? We'll hear theories from the prosecution. But I do not believe there will be any new actual evidence. Like, for instance, the weapon won't exist, so we still won't have a murder weapon. We will not have a motive. We don't have a motive now. I don't think we're going to have a motive then. I do believe that the DNA, it was illegally gotten, and I believe the case should be dismissed against Bryan Kohberger. So before you guys start getting mad, I believe the case against Bryan Kohberger should be dismissed because the FBI refuses to tell us how they got to Bryan Kohberger, how they got the DNA. Did they go through a site they weren't supposed to go on to get Bryan Kohberger's DNA? I believe that the truth behind that is enough bad shit and enough corruption and enough bullshit that the case should be dismissed. Here's the truth, though. Did Bryan Kohberger do it? I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the fence of whether he actually did it. I've always been on the fence. My entire statement this entire time is they don't have enough evidence to convict him. But I do believe that he will be convicted, and here's why. Who was the last person to get off? Think about it. We've been covering these cases a long time, man. And who was the last person that we were covering these cases with that got found not guilty? Let's call it what it is. The bitch that put the dude in the suitcase, guilty. Brian Laundrie, guilty. Well, we found that with the suicide note, right? Richard Allen, guilty. Leilani Simon, guilty. And many of you guys covered a lot of other stories. They were guilty. When's the last time that in a major case like this, that the person was found not guilty? Guys, I didn't think they were going to find Richard Allen guilty. I genuinely didn't, because all they had was a bullet casing in a case where there was no shooting, and apparently confessions that was made under duress. I believe 100% with all the media coverage, and I'm going to show you an example right now, that Bryan Kohberger at trial will be found guilty. We'll get to that Delphi shit here in just a second, but here's why. Shit like this. Bryan Kohberger investigated over nearby home invasion year before alleged slayings of 4 Idaho students. Guys, I don't think he was in Idaho then, or Washington then. I guess it's possible. Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger was once investigated in connection to a chilling home invasion that took place mere miles from where he allegedly slaughtered 4 college students inside the blah, blah, blah. New information about the accused killer comes after ABC News obtained body cam footage of police responding to a suspected home invasion nearby Pullman, Washington in October 2021, more than a year before the Idaho 4 murders. We'll get to this because I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to be honest. In my mind, this entire situation should cause enough, this actually should be reason for Bryan Kohberger to walk. However, that's not the way it's going to work out. The fact that he was investigated at all in that case means that's the way that the public sees it. That's the way the audience sees it. They already thought he was a serial killer. They already questioned it. They were like, hey, he was in criminology and they thought he was a serial killer. Maybe he wanted to be a serial killer. Here's the truth. When you hear this, you'll understand that this should get Bryan Kohberger off the hook, because the defense should be able to use this and say, look, man, there was already someone doing this shit. And it wasn't Kohberger. This is what they should be saying. And theoretically, and this should go into a jury's mind with all the circumstantial evidence, because there's no real evidence, and say, you know what, man, I don't think maybe Kohberger didn't do this. It should put a doubt in the jury's mind, but I don't think it will. I think it will go the opposite way, and people will be like, did he do this? I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Right here.
In the Idaho college murders case, officials now say the Poconos native Bryan Kohberger was investigated in connection with an earlier home invasion. Now, new body cam footage shows police responding to an alleged home invasion just 1 year before the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students, and it was less than 10 miles from their off-campus home. According to the police report, a woman said a masked intruder entered her bedroom in Pullman, Washington, holding a knife without saying a word.
Think about that. That's some Idaho 4 sounding shit if Dylan Mulvaney or whatever that motherfucking bitch's name is to be, can't remember that, Mortensen. If that bitch is to be believed, that sounds a lot like it. Black mask, knife, not talking. But then again, if you think about it, they make it sound like Bryan Kohberger was talking during Idaho 4, if it was him. You know, I'm here to help you. Remember that shit? You know what I mean? So, I don't really know. But we'll continue.
I heard my door open, and I looked over, and someone was wearing a ski mask and had a knife. And so I, kicked the out of their stomach and screamed super loud, and they, flew back into my closet, and then...
Oh, come on, man. I do want to say this. Come on, man. Some bitch was able to take down the killer. I kicked him in the nuts, and he fell back into the closet. I wiped the snack cakes off my hand and... Stop it. Stop it. This may not have anything to do with the Idaho 4, but I think it's... this is the type of information that they put out there, right?
Ran out my door and up the stairs.
Officers found no suspect or evidence when they arrived on the scene. Kohberger was then named a person of interest in that case.
That's crazy.
Shortly after being arrested for the stabbing deaths of Kaylee Gunn.
Okay, so that tells you exactly what you need to know. After he was arrested, they then investigated him. Keep that in mind. So it's not like Bryan Kohberger was invested. Keep this in mind. In Pennsylvania, remember when they said, well, maybe Kohberger did this shit? You know, remember that shit? Everybody trying to then add crimes to it and say, well, Kohberger did this, Kohberger did that. That's not the same. And I've heard people talk about this. This isn't the same as investigating Kohberger for this before the Idaho 4, right? And I think that's the main thing here. But the way the true crimers are saying, see, he was investigated for for shit like this before the Idaho 4. No, it wasn't. This was after the Idaho 4.
Olives, Madison Mogan, Zaina Coronado, and Ethan Chapin. But a report revealed that Kohberger was not yet enrolled in Washington State University, nor was he visiting the campus as a prospective grad student. Pullman police say that he is no longer a person of interest in that break-in.
That's right. Now I want you to hear me out.
And it remains unsolved. Now there are questions if the defense will try to use that to raise doubt in Kohberger's murder trial.
Without a doubt, Bryan Kohberger's defense team is going to try to raise reasonable doubt by pointing to an alternative suspect. In using this alleged burglary, the question becomes, why would a judge admit this evidence where nothing about this case tends to prove that Bryan Kohberger was not the murderer?
As for Kohberger's murder trial, a judge has entered a not guilty plea on his behalf, and he could face the death penalty if convicted.
All right, so let's talk about that a little bit, right? No, they probably won't allow it at the trial at all. They probably will not allow it at the trial at all, but I think they should. This is one of those situations where it's like, all right, somebody probably tried to think about this. This is the same area, the same little 10-mile radius. You don't think that a year prior to this, somebody going into a woman's house with a mask and a knife, you don't think that has any connection to the Idaho 4 at all? Judge won't hear it, though. I promise you the judge won't hear it. The jury will never hear about that shit. And in fact, even if they do hear about it, they won't hear the facts. They'll hear about this because all the headlines are saying Bryan Kohberger was investigated. You're seeing it everywhere. They're not, people typically don't read beyond the headline. That's how stupid our country is. They typically don't read beyond the headline. So to your average potential juror that's just out reading news right now, they're going to say, see, Kohberger was going to kill a year before that. And I'm telling you, that's going to have an effect on the trial. So my prediction is Bryan Kohberger will be found guilty in November of 2025 for the Idaho 4 killings, despite the fact I don't believe there's enough evidence. I think people tend to believe the police, and then they're going to believe the FBI, even though the FBI is clearly hiding something. So I believe that Kohberger will found guilty. Let me give you a couple more predictions. Richard Allen. I believe he will appeal his conviction, and I believe he will lose his appeal. There will be no new trial. He will get 130 years, which is what he's got. Richard Allen has been sentenced to 130 years. And the reason I say this is because I firmly believe that the state of Indiana convicted Richard Allen I believe that Richard Allen was arrested and convicted based on the fact that they just wanted it to appear that they solved the case. I do believe Richard Allen is probably more likely the killer than Bryan Kohberger is in his. And why do I say that? The confessions. Bryan Kohberger, I'm not sure about. You know, with Bryan Kohberger, there is a informant, and I can't wait to see who the informant is and what they know about Bryan Kohberger or the case. I want to say this. Richard Allen did not get a fair shake, I don't believe. I don't believe they had anything on him. Not really. And I believe, though, however, that the state of Indiana and the city of Delphi, if they feel so much relief that the murderer of the girls is locked up, I truly believe that he will lose his appeal. In fact, I don't even think he will get an appeal. I think his appeals will be rejected. I don't think he will get a new trial or anything like that. I think Richard Allen is completely done. And for that same reason, I believe Idaho 4 will be the exact same way. And it's because that Moscow, Idaho, and the state of Idaho can't let Bryan Kohberger walk free. The one thing I've learned this year is if the police say you did it, the jury is going to say you did it. Because most of these cases are not like Leilani Simon, where it was obvious she did it, right? Leilani Simon was obvious she did it. But all these other cases, Alex Murdaugh, all these motherfuckers are guilty. They found him guilty, right? And I think for Bryan Kohberger, it'll happen. I think he will lose all future appeals. Richard Allen will lose his appeal. I believe they will put Bryan Kohberger to death, not this year because it's 2025 predictions, but I believe that he will be found guilty and sentenced to the death penalty. P-Diddy. Diddy will be found guilty as well. Now, will he go to trial this year? That's a good question. Federal cases tend to work faster, right? And federal cases, look, man, the feds don't lose. The feds have like a 99.2% conviction percentage. And for some reason, for whatever reason, they want P. Diddy. There's going to be more claims made, as there already is, because people are going to consider P. Diddy a dead man walking, and they're going to want a chunk of his money. So I believe that P. Diddy will be found guilty if it happens this year. I believe P. Diddy will be found guilty. He may even sign a plea bargain, right? Or I think he'll just be killed or suicided. In all reality, let me say this. I don't believe he'll be killed like, for instance, like Epstein. Because I don't believe Diddy or anybody of the Taiwanese persuasion is important enough for the government to kill, right? Now, will another Tyrone kill Diddy? Probably. You know what I mean? There may be another Tyrone that kills Diddy. But also, Diddy losing his kids, losing his family, potentially losing his wealth. I think it's very possible that Diddy actually commits suicide. So, will it happen this year? I don't think so. Will his trial happen this year? I don't know. But I do think the trial will be rather quick. The feds don't miss, man. The feds come in firing, and the trials typically are quick, and you're out of there. The feds don't fuck around. Because you got to remember, the feds are the type of people that they don't even arrest you and prosecute you unless they're sure in their case. That is why the feds never lose. So I think this year, that's the cases I wanted to talk about. Now, I hope we get some new cases in 2025, because obviously the Richard Allen case is done, Leilani Simon case is done. So I need some new shit. But either way, I'm gonna present to you regular crime cases on here, all of this shit in 2025. You will get a video every day from me. So hopefully I can get you 365 videos this year. That's the plan. So, and some of them will be smaller videos, smaller cases, but whatever. But in these crimes, I just want to tell you what it is. Once again, so my 4 predictions. 3 true crimers will get arrested. Bryan Kohberger will be found guilty. Richard Allen will lose his appeal and not get a new trial. Diddy, if he has trial, will be found guilty. There will be no release for P. Diddy. They will not release him on bond. Nothing. Diddy's there to stay, and I don't think P. Diddy ever walks the streets again. Does that make sense? They might offer him a plea that gives him less than life, but I don't think P. Diddy ever steps outside another day in his life. Guys, let me know what you think about those predictions. What are some of yours? Let me know in the comments section, man. I love you guys, man. I love you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hey, real quick before you guys go, let me say thank you to everybody that supports the channel. Hell, any of my channels, regardless of platforms, regardless of method that you choose, whether it's Cash App, Patreon, Venmo, PayPal. Truth is, guys, I couldn't have done it for the last 18 years over all these different channels if it wasn't for you, the Gun Squad. Thank you. I love you guys so much. And if you too find my content valuable, feel free to hit the links down below. Show some love. Join the Gun Squad today. I also got 24 different channels, all kinds of genres, gaming, true crime, everything you could think of. Feel free to check those links out. Hopefully you find something you get into. Once again, thank you guys. Love you, Gun Squad. I'm out.